bestseller and it hasn't been released yet, Understanding Trump, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. How does your book become #1 and you didn't release it? How did that happen?
Well, lots of people go and pre-purchase it and got excited by the idea of understanding Trump.
There's an understanding here, though. I mean, I mentioned about the assault. You've seen it over the years, all of us that are conservatives. You lived through it when you were Speaker. But this effort to silence conservatives, this effort to destroy anybody, all the collateral damage they can get around the president. What do you make of it all?
Look, this is a frenzied, almost a death behavior by the left because they're in such trouble, and Trump potentially represents the end of their world. And so you have very powerful institutions. I mean, the amount of leaking coming out of the intelligence community is staggering. It's all illegal. People should go to jail. I wrote my newsletter on this last week and said, you know, leakers should be locked up. But it's deeper than that. The Washington Post stories are someday historians are going to look back on this and say it was one of the funniest periods in American history. Here you have Barack Obama, who created background techniques for communicating with Iran during his transition. Clearly a sign, because it was Obama, that it was quite clever. Now you have the Trump people may have been doing a parallel thing during the transition. I had one reporter yesterday say to me, but what does this tell you about collusion during the election? I said, well, the dates you're describing are after the election. He said, oh yeah, that's right, isn't it? I mean, there's this really almost insane pattern right now in the elite media that says, we know Trump is wrong, we're not sure what it is. Or we know he's done something horrible, we don't know what it is. And then they go from there. And I think it tells you how frenzied they are to stop the momentum of the Trump administration. And frankly, the president's carrying an enormous burden on his shoulders because he is taking on this entire establishment system, which is trying to break him.
You know, I watched with, for example, General Flynn, and in his particular case, he was reaching out to his future counterpart. Jared's back channels. Well, didn't Obama do that with this horrible Iranian deal? And when he sat with Medvedev and he said, tell Vladimir, I'll have a lot more flexibility when I get reelected. That seems to me to be a back channel communication, which seems smart. Reaching out to your future counterpart, reaching out to a country in the hopes that you can begin a dialogue for the betterment of both sides does not seem so sinister. And by the way, I say this, I'm going to put up on the side of the screen all the deep state leaks under Trump so our audience can see. What's your response?
Well, let me say, first of all, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was a back channel communication, which many people credit with saving us from nuclear war. When Richard Nixon wanted to open up ties to communist China, it was a back channel process that started that process. When Eisenhower wanted to end the Korean War, it was a back channel through India that was their key communication method. This notion that suddenly this is a terrible thing, it verges on being insane. But this whole story, and I worry, I don't actually worry about the substance. I worry about the investigative process and the degree to which sooner or later, somewhere, somebody will engage in a mistake, and that mistake will now become the problem, not the original act, not the original accusation. And people have to be very careful in dealing with the criminal justice system, especially when you remember a simple fact, Sean. 97% of the campaign donations given by the Justice Department went to Hillary Clinton.
Why are all these holdovers still there? Why aren't they gone?
Look, we're talking about deep into the bureaucracy when you talk about the total number of donors, but it's also true that there are Obama appointees that are still all over the place, and the Trump administration ought to be doubling and tripling its effort to get rid of them. I mean, it is absurd that we are now we're about to enter June with people from the Obama era still in decision-making positions throughout the government. And by the way, there was also the deliberate design of Schumer and the Senate Democrats to slow down every nominee, because that slows down all the people below them. And so from the standpoint of the Democrats, they've had quite a success at slowing down the rate at which Trump has taken control of the federal government.
All right, Mr. Speaker, stay right there. We have another segment, more with Speaker Gingrich when we come back, and also later tonight.
It's borderline, if not over the line of treason.
You believe it's treason to leak some of this stuff? You believe that's treason?
I do believe it is.
This is such a big story. The DHS secretary says the leaks out of Washington, the deep state, can be described with the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. All right, I want to put back on the screen all of these leaks, deep state leaks, against the president, because there's been so many. To me, there's just such a grave danger, because in many ways, what they're doing not only is unconstitutional, in the case of General Flynn, violates the Espionage Act, but it seems to me that if they can, and we'll get into this with Carter and Solomon in the next segment, if they can surveil, unmask, release raw intelligence against Americans, which is illegal, that seems to be foundationally something that would be a dictatorship, that something would be a police state. If the government is literally surveilling, unmasking, and releasing intelligence, which has happened, and we know it's happened.
Well, let me draw a distinction between, there are 2 points here. The first, which you're starting to make right now, is that having Obama deliberately decide to loosen the rules, and candidly, I don't know yet if Trump has issued tightening the rules again, which he should, but the entire Obama effort to loosen the rules was a deliberate encouragement of the deep state to start going after American citizens. And you're right, this is a major step, just as the violence on campuses and the various things that the left is doing to shut people up. This is one more step towards the kind of tyranny that the American Constitution was designed to block. But there's a second half of this, which is the leaking of secrets. And I thought it was very sobering yesterday when Secretary John Kelly, 4-star Marine general, very sober guy, not inclined to be, to go out on a limb, when he was asked, he said, I actually regard leaking these secrets as virtually treason. And I think we should take it that seriously. I think if you want to leak secrets about who's doing what to whom in the White House, that's politics. Maybe you fire people. But you start leaking America's secrets, which weakens us in the world, risks our agents, scares our allies, strengthens our enemies, you want to go to jail. And I am disgusted with the degree to which the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the major networks are enablers of what John Kelly has said is the equivalent of treason.
It's been so bad, and they've been proven wrong. Like the Deputy Attorney General didn't say he was going to quit. We learned that Comey didn't ask for more money. They didn't need more money, according to McNabe. And even the Comey memo is problematic, because that would have meant, if he thought that it was obstruction, he would have violated 2 felony laws, because that was in January, and he testified in May that nobody ever tried to get him to do that. I want to ask this. So I have an FBI friend, and we were talking this weekend. You talked in the last segment about how the risk is when they're investigating, and if you don't get a fact right, or if you forgot an email you sent, that not necessarily sometimes that you do something wrong, but it's a perjury trap for people. And my FBI friend said to me, and I love the FBI, I love law enforcement, I respect them, and I would want to help them. And he goes, the fact is you can never talk to them. I said, what do you mean? If they come and ask you questions, you got to shut up. And I'm like, even if I can help them? He goes, if you get something wrong, you could be charged with lying to the FBI. There's something radically wrong with that system, isn't there?
Yes, the whole thing has gotten to be, I think, very dangerous, very ruthless. I have said over and over again that the conviction of Scooter Libby in the Bush administration is one of the greatest scandals in modern America. He did nothing wrong. They knew he wasn't the person they were looking for. They knew who they were looking for. And the prosecutor not only deliberately targeted Libby to try to get to Dick Cheney, but the prosecutor locked up a New York Times reporter for 85 days. I've always been astounded that the news media didn't go crazy. This is a prosecutor who locks up a reporter for 85 days because he's engaged in a political witch hunt to try to get the Vice President of the United States. That's what the Trump people have to be afraid of, is that in a system, and that's why I mentioned earlier the donations. If you're in a department which had 97% of its campaign donations go to Hillary Clinton, you've got a culture and an attitude and a style that is very dangerous for anybody who's in favor of Trump.
All right, Mr. Speaker, and it would be nice if maybe we can get away from some of these nonstop attacks, all the distractions, so maybe the president's agenda that he promised the American people to get people back to work, out of poverty, off of food stamps, and get people back in homes with the lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. It would be nice if we could focus on those things. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Thank you. And up next tonight on this Breaking News Night, tonight here on Hannity.
It's borderline, if not over the line of treason.
You believe it's treason to leak some of this stuff? You believe that's treason?
I do believe it is.
More on that outrageous statement and hopefully not a true statement. That's scary. The DHS Secretary John Kelly talking about the dangerous leaks that are coming out of Washington. It could have crossed a line into treason. Jay Sekulow,